2011, and we are going strong through the pandemic, through wars, through our second pandemic, if you count the Spanish flu of 1918. So we're here for the long run. We've had a very, very interesting and challenging 2020, but we're emerging from it larger, bigger, and better than ever, and really reconnecting to all of our local communities. It's been an honor and a privilege to run the Queens Chamber of Commerce, and I wanted to tell a little story, if I can, before I share the mic and turn over the agenda to our moderator, um, Neil Fleischman. So I've been in the chamber for 5 years, and I come from a Fortune 500 as well as a startup background. And shortly after I got here, we started forming more member committees: real estate, um, transportation, restaurant hospitality, you name it by the vertical. We form these member committees to engage people, because our feeling is getting somebody to join the chamber, any chamber, is one part of the process, but getting them to stay is another. And the member committees engage folks all the time, like this forum. I went to my chairman at the time, who was a great man who recently passed away, but he hired me, a gentleman named Al Panisi. And I said, Al, I've got all these committees I want to start, and all these member committees, and one of the ones I want to do is not for profit. And Al, who is a very austere gentleman, looked at me with a quizzical eye and said, "Not for profits? Tom, we're a business organization." And so we had a nice chuckle about it. But I was hell bent then, and I'm hell bent now on supporting not for profits. In Queens County, some of our not for profits are some of our most well known, well run organizations that employ tens of thousands of people. And when they grow and prosper, the business community and the borough as a whole grows and prosper. They have to go out and buy material. They have to go out and hire people. They have to go out and do training. They have to go out and do a whole bunch of different things. And so we have not-for-profits near and dear to our heart. We welcome not-for-profits as members of the Chamber of Commerce, and we put on forums and programs like this to not only elevate, but to support the not-for-profits out there. I'm happy to let you know that of those on the panel today, I know each and every one of them, with one exception. I was happy to meet one of them, Jemay, today from Tigerman. But I'm going to give Neil Fleischman the honors in a moment. But again, the Queens Chamber of Commerce has been here for 110 years. We're here to help you grow your business, your organization, your not-for-profit. We have a best practices program. We help out restaurants. We cover the gamut to make sure that you're informed and aware of what's going on. So I won't belabor the point. I want to thank my manager of member committees, Jeff Gross, who works tirelessly behind the scenes to help put these programs together. If you've got anything you want to see on our programs, please email me personally at tgretch, Grech, at queenschamber.org. Go to our website and jump right in. We'd love to have you. Without further ado, I want to turn the microphone over to Neil Fleischman. He's the area president at Payday. Neil, thanks so much for your volunteerism, and thanks for being here today. I look forward to listening to your presentation, and those are your panel members.
Thanks, Tom, and appreciate your remarks this morning and making time for us. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us for today's webinar, which is Virtual Fundraising, the Next Phase in Elevating Your Nonprofit. As Tom mentioned, on behalf of the Queens Chamber of Commerce and the Nonprofit Committee, welcome. I am Neil Fleischman, area president at Payday, also a longtime board member at the Queens Botanical Garden, and of course, member of the Queens Chamber Nonprofit Committee. And I'll be your moderator for today's program. We're fortunate to have a really distinguished group of panelists with us this morning, nonprofit professionals: Victoria Pawar, Manager of Strategic Partnerships at St. Mary's Hospital for Children; Wendy Pfaff Gennaro, Director of Development, Queens Chamber for Progress; and Jemay Crowder, Director of Fund Development at Tigerman. I don't have to tell you, but 2020 proved to be a really challenging year for nonprofits, especially in regards to fundraising. As we move into 2021, virtual events are here to stay. You've probably been building the plane while you've been flying it. Whether you've done one or many, or maybe not yet waded into the water, this session will ground you in what works and what to avoid. We will look at examples, share timelines, and explore other tools necessary to create an engaging online experience for your audience and key stakeholders. From how many RSVPs you can expect, platform options, technical pitfalls, avoiding screen burnout, to find topics that will resonate and bring an audience. We'll cover the basics and more. I'd like to start this morning with a quick story, a personal story about my experience at as I was the board chair at the Queen's Botanical Garden this past year, and wanted to share the processes that we went through specifically about our gala. Like many of you, we were faced early on with decisions about our annual gala. Ours was scheduled for early June, so we had to move pretty quickly. Although we were knee deep in the pandemic, or the early stages of the pandemic, our facility was shut down on March 19th, actually, but we had to make decisions. Really what it came down to is, do we cancel? Do we postpone until the fall? Or do we proceed with a virtual gala on our original date? Postponing to the fall was quickly ruled out, as that would push our revenue into fiscal 2020, fiscal 21, and we really needed that revenue based on our current budget. So as much as we didn't want to cancel, the thought of a virtual gala was a bit scary. Obviously, we'd never done it before. So we questioned whether we had the knowledge and the resources to pull it off, and also concerns about would it tarnish our image if our donors, with our donors, if it didn't turn out well. We relied on our trusted, transparent communication process between senior staff and the board, which was really key for us to help us develop a plan that we felt we could execute. So we revised our budget and expectations and decided to move forward with a virtual gala. At the end of the day, our revenue was 50% more than what we had revised to when we decided to do it virtually. And more importantly, our net profit was 90% of what our traditional event had been in the past. So all in all, what turned out to be something that was a scary thought turned into really an incredible event. Our supporters, our stakeholders, our patrons really enjoyed it. And of course, it was a profitable event for us. So before we begin our panel discussion, I want to encourage everybody to ask questions along the way. And you'll do that if you look on the lower right portion of your screen, you'll see a Q&A box. If you can, try to use that versus the chat box. It'll be easier for me to navigate. And I'm going to be watching the Q&A box. So when we get to the end, I'll be taking those questions from the Q&A box. So without further ado, I'd like to begin with our panelists. And my first question, I'm going to go to Wendy first. And that is, what did your process look like when it was obvious that in-person events were not going to be possible?
Thanks, Neil. First, I just want to say thank you to the Chamber and to our nonprofit committee and everyone, my companions here on this panel, and for hosting this. So just a little background. Our last in-person event was on March 3rd of 2020, and it was a mega successful event. We had over 500 people out on a Tuesday night. And 13 days later, I was sitting in our directors meeting discussing how our agency was going to provide services in case of limited attendance and possible closure. And that really became our priority and our shift. So for us, it was important to get everybody set up at home and be able to have a communication, line open between everyone in the absence of being together. But as for specifically to our events, so priority one for us was setting up a mechanism to keep our individuals and our programs engaged. Our program directors and staff were dealing with regulations, directives, what they could, what they couldn't do. So my team went into high gear to set up Zoom groups to keep our individuals and their families engaged and connected while programs were shifting to remote services. The second priority was getting the word out about our situation. With COVID hitting our residences, our staff were selflessly quarantining themselves in our houses for 2 weeks at a time. PPE was insane for all of us in the beginning, getting it. The cost was escalating. So really getting an online campaign and appeal up and running was our second priority. Priority three then became tackling our events and wrapping our heads around what they would look like in the virtual world. Our biggest event of the year is in September. It's a 300 plus attendee golf outing with a 500 plus attendee dinner in the evening. It is by far our biggest event, so we were a little bit panicked over how that was going to play out. But fortunately, our partners, who are amazing and so supportive, said, hey, you know what, we're not going to play golf this year, but we're still going to support you. So they voluntarily launched a fundraising campaign on our behalf, which raised about maybe 2/3 of what we normally would raise, but that is still a huge number for us. And since it was in our next fiscal year, we were able to budget accordingly. Then we have other events like our walk. We were just about to have our annual walk. We get 300 people, 300 runners and walkers there. So first we postponed it thinking, oh, we'll have it in April. And then of course we turned it into a virtual event. And then rather than focusing on large events, we started something called what we call QCP Encounters, which was just a series of smaller events just to kind of keep people engaged. And then our last event was our marathon participation. And in the absence of a New York City marathon, that, kind of took that off the table. So I think what the overall process was prioritizing what the agency needed to fulfill our mission, and then kind of focus on how we were going to bridge the gap in the budget with the absence of our events, especially being an event-driven department. But I just have to say, I have amazing staff: Sean Caruana, Jyoti Lakhani, and Alex Coronius. And the three of them, we worked our tushies off and really we're in like high gear, and it was almost 24 hours a day early on in the pandemic, but they're amazing and pulled it together.
Great, thank you. Victoria, would you mind giving us an idea of how this worked over at St. Mary's?
Sure. So, similar to Wendy, you kind of go in this high gear mode as soon as something happens. So it kind of went from 0 to 100 with us. We have 127 inpatients. So we were having parents quarantine with us because it was either that or they weren't able to see their kids until, we still have no visitation now, 1 year plus, almost a year later. So that was kind of our, we took a breather. We figured out, what our healthcare system needed to do as a whole. And then we started, planning mode. So, things were postponed, canceled, which ones, that was the first thing that we did, is which ones need to be canceled, which ones need to be postponed, which ones have to be rescheduled. So you have, all these different options and which one is best for which event. And the question for us was, not only how to connect personally with people, but how to engage them successfully. So, we use social media from the very beginning. We moved to more campaigns as opposed to, like Wendy said, we're an event-driven department as well. So we moved more to the campaign aspect as opposed to the event aspect. And, as soon as, COVID hit, obviously fundraising for PPEs, and then we had to, we're still testing our staff 1 to 2 times a week. So that's a huge burden monetarily on our nonprofit. So we shifted to peer-to-peer fundraisers, virtual campaigns, social media campaigns. We really just tried to ask, the major thing was the ask. And that's always the thing for not only events, but online. And it's how do you ask and how do you get other people to ask? And that was really, what we focused on.
Great. Thank you. Jemaine, please share your experience at Tiegerman.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be a part of this panel and that we were able to put this together for everyone that joined us today, and welcome. Yes, I'm the development director for Tiegerman. And Tiegerman is a school for children with developmental disabilities and learning language disabilities, as well as adult service programs for individuals that are disabled. So our age range runs the gamut from, daycare all the way up to adulthood. So just as my wonderful panelists had expressed, it hit us hard. We are not only a school, but we are also a service provider for individuals with disabilities. And, it went into high lockdown and high gear PPE. And the other thing about us is that we're, a 7 to 20, a year-round school, shall I say? Sorry. we're year round. So even in the summer and March, every part of this year, we had to have schooling, and that was a huge thing that we needed to make sure our teachers, our families, our students, everybody was safe. So, you know, we did what was necessary. We did our prioritizing. Number one is making sure everybody was safe and healthy, and that we made sure that our families were aware as to what was going on constantly. I think that was number one. Our program director, we started up a communication utilizing our YouTube channel, which became a huge asset to us, and posting regular announcements on there to tell them kind of the state of the union, as we called it, for Tigerman. So that was one huge thing that we started doing. We really started connecting on a different level with our families and our participants. The biggest thing about Tigerman is that 78% of our individuals were impacted negatively during this whole, they were in the high impact zones. And most of our families, unfortunately, are low income. So not only were they in the high impact zones, which is based in New York, but they are also low income. So we couldn't reach out to our families to support us. We had to reach out beyond our families and really express to our donors and to our sponsors, you know, what was going on. We weren't able to hold our gala, which we normally do in November. And because so much was going on and our school was really focusing on making sure that we're still running properly and everything was, you know, running properly, that we halted that, and we are actually going to be hosting a virtual gala still within our fiscal year in March. So we are in the midst of the planning process right now. So I know, like my counterparts, we all kind of are either in the process or have held virtual events. I've held a lot of smaller virtual events this whole time as well, that also helped to connect our community. I think that was one other kind of fun way that we engaged our community, mostly during the break. We had a small break of school. And then also extending it past that to the summertime, we held a ton of fun little bingo nights virtually, you know, things to keep us happy and engaged. And it was a low cost, so our family was engaged, but they were still able to support us in some capacity. So we really had to shift our focus, and we still are shifting our focus to this day.
Great, thank you for sharing. All right, we're going to move on to our second question, and I'm going to start with Victoria. So now that 2020 is in the rearview mirror, can you speak a little bit about what worked well for you, and maybe something that didn't, that you will be avoiding moving forward?
Sure. So kind of like Jamae said, you know, we did these small community fundraisers online virtually. So we did trivia nights, Zumba workout classes, paint nights, arts and crafts nights. So, you know, we really tried to, you know, when you have live in-person events, especially ones that we host, like our walk has 500 or 600 people that come together. So trying to take that and, you know, minimize that and break that up into like 10 smaller events, even if you have 10 people sign up, one, you're still connecting with your community, and two, you're still fundraising a bit. And, you know, these virtual events most of the time are no cost at all. So not only are you being able to keep all of the revenue, but you're also able to tap into different groups of people. So I think that's something that, you know, really worked for us, was we got to tap into different groups of our community through different virtual events. So, you know, if we have one big virtual event, one big in-person event, if people don't like to walk or run or, you know, have smaller kids, they might not join your walk. But if you have 10 smaller virtual events, someone might be interested in trivia, someone might like painting, someone might like, so that's really what worked for us, was we got to engage different groups of people. You know, obviously we also had a virtual gala as well. So even if people aren't able to come out to your in-person gala, they were able to log in online. So we got to, you know, bring more people in that don't usually come to our gala. So it opened up a whole new group of people for us. You know, we did video updates from our CEO every week. And I think social media was something that we didn't necessarily use as much. And now it's just been a part of our new plan. And that's just going forward, that's not going to change. And I think, you know, changing the ask is something that, was difficult for us. And, in some ways you ask in different ways and not all of them worked. But as long as you keep asking in different ways, you find out which ones work and which ones don't. And I think that's the whole thing about virtual stuff, is that you try something, and if it doesn't work, you try something else, especially if they're no cost. If social media or these virtual events, most of them are no cost. So that's my suggestion, is to just try. And, what works for my organization might not work for yours. And I think that's just the process that all of us are going to have to go through right now.
Great. Jermaine.
Yes, and I was going to say, obviously we're talking about kind of what worked and what didn't work in 2020. But overall, I wanted to share with you guys, these are just different things that we experienced. And the nice thing I think about our organization and the Queen's Chamber and the nonprofit committee is that we're not trying to sell you anything. So all the things that we talk about today are kind of like our experiences. So we might not have the top answers, maybe not the worst answers. We're probably just telling and sharing our wonderful experiences that we've had. So, overall, for 2020, we experimented as well. We had a lot of fun, even though, it was a terrible time to quote unquote have fun. It was, something we needed for our families and for community. Like I said, we did the bingo nights. We also did, our program director voluntarily shaved his head to raise money as well. So that was something else that we did to bring people together. We did dance-a-thons, we did science events. We did kind of the gamut of things that our population would be excited about. And I think that was something that, when you think about your organization, think about what your people, like, what do they want to try? Something that relates to them, what would bring them out? I'm thinking about my gala, and we're thinking about, who should we, we normally honor somebody. So who should we honor? Those kind of individuals that have gone above and beyond. Well, for us, our individuals that have gone above and beyond are all of our staff, our teachers, our professionals. Those are the individuals that I think at the end of the day really shine. So that is what we're thinking towards our gala, of, really featuring the people that make our organization shine, and our donors and our sponsors. That's why they support us, because they know we're an organization that supports these wonderful families and kids, and we couldn't do it without our staff at the end of the day. I kind of got off topic on there, but I think I've kind of answered the question, right?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. You know what? I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head at the beginning of what you were saying is, the idea here is for people to hear, what others are doing. And I think that's so important, the collaboration in the nonprofit community. Everybody, we were all thrown into this water at the same time last year. Nobody had the answers. Nobody was prepared. Nobody knew what to do. Yet I think it's so like how all these organizations that our great panelists are involved in, how you guys were able to pull it together and create a successful fundraising strategy for the year for you guys. So Wendy, I know you guys have done a lot of great things. So would you mind answering the same question as well?
Thanks. So I just want to comment on a couple of things that Victoria and Jemay said, about social media being so important at this time. And early on in the pandemic, we were going through such a hard time, and people saw that and they knew that. And, it was scary. It was really, it was a horrible time. And, I was reflecting on some of the things we did in the past year, and I honestly blotted out March, April, and May, possibly part of June, because it was that, that horrible. But the community was amazing at that time, and the outpouring of people who were donating all sorts of stuff to us, and especially in our residences. And I did not mention earlier on, but similar to what Jemay does, we provide services also for people with developmental and intellectual disabilities. Most of our individuals are adults, and then we also have a children's center as well. So it was really important to get the word out on social media. And like Victoria said, that became very important, more important than ever. We're always active. Our Facebook is always active, but this became like an important important messaging at this time. And it was also really important for us to recognize the people that were taking care of us. And that ran the gamut from like people dropping off masks, people feeding our residences. There's businesses who were cooking on every Friday, 135 meals for our staff and our individuals in our residences. So we started online what we call I can never remember if it was "You're amazing," "You're awesome," but we had a post every day about somebody who did something extraordinary. And even very, very sweet was this one woman who every Saturday was dropping off a Carvel cake to one of our residences, and she would pick a different house. So all those things were really important and helped us, and also helped get the word out and also raise more money. The other thing, like we all have experience, we all kind of shifted to these smaller events. So we had our QCP encounters. They were fun, engaging, like my counterparts. We did escape rooms, cook-alongs with a prominent local person who everybody like loves his cooking. We had some interviews with authors. And then looking at the other options, we're like, we've always been strong on peer-to-peer in other ways. So we decided to try some new initiatives. So I would have to say, if this kind of falls into the didn't exactly work, we set up something we call the QCP Jail and Bail campaign. And I do like to lead by example. So I happily threw myself in jail for QCP. Unfortunately, it was a tricky and kind of touchy subject at the time because things were heating up about bail reform. And around the same time, we had the situation with George Floyd. So making light of jailing and bailing just wasn't really a great time, but I still managed to raise $5,000 and had a big get Wendy out of jail bail Zoom party, which was a lot of fun. So maybe we can fine tune that and get it to work. Also our gala, which typically is in June, we had to move that, and we moved that into November because we weren't sure what we were going to do yet. So we ended up doing a live band from our auditorium in our adult center. And also we had a theme of thanking our lucky stars as it was coming to the end of the year. It was November, and we wanted, like, you were saying, Jamae, like, look at how we look at our gala and who we honor, and just really be grateful that we had come as far as we had. So that was kind of our theme for that. And it was successful. We exceeded our budget, so I was really happy, and that was a lot thanks to our honoree. But also what we learned is we had a live band broadcasting. So, and we did a live program with some pre-recorded content. And in that case, I think we could have gone with more, at least with the program being pre-recorded and the band playing live might have been fine, or pre-recorded. So when you can, I think the pre-recorded is great because you really want to have control over your content and make a flawless presentation. And like you said earlier, Neil, like, what are our constituents going to think of us? We can't blow it. It's got to be good. So, there's like all these things, and I certainly would have been a lot happier sitting at home watching it with a glass of wine instead of having to like be the MC and talking all night. But it still came off really good. So I think, and what we also learned and why these things are working, I think, is like you said, Victoria, we're extending our audience. Not everybody can buy a $250 ticket for a gala, and by making it available to people on Zoom, broadcasting it on live on Facebook, you may not get hundreds of people, but you're still getting people who don't know who you are and who are now familiar with you. So it's really broadening our audience a lot. And definitely learned a lot this year.
Great, thank you. So, basically in the way you guys answered that last question, you all kind of touched on or referenced how your fundraising strategy changed last year based on the circumstances. So now that virtual is certainly going to be here for 2021, and who knows, maybe beyond, does that change or alter your strategy moving forward? And is this going to become a regular part of how you fundraise? So Jamae, if you don't mind, I'd like to start with you.
Yes, no, that is a very good question. I think we all nodding because it 100% is going to change the way we're looking forward. I mean, not only when you call the catering calls right now, on top of that, they don't even know what's going to be the regulations going forward. So they're not even really booking until 2022. So that's the other ordeal you have to work with. Are you going to have an outside event? You're going to have, what kind of event, if you were going to have an in-person event? I think even going further than that, I think hybrid events are kind of where we're headed. Even if we're going to do some in-person smaller parties, we could always do the virtual portion of it as well to keep on extending our audience and inviting those people that typically wouldn't be able to come in the room to join us virtually. And I think, as Wendy and Victoria had mentioned, it's really exciting to the prospect of inviting these additional families and friends and potential donors to participate in our virtual events, because it's a new way to expand our donor base, of course. And, just as you guys are all, here today, you're here because something of interest perked your, something perked your interest to join us today, to learn a little bit, to hear a little bit. So that's really kind of what we're all trying to do in our organization, is really get the word out there. And how are we going to do that? So communication tools, utilizing email and social media. But I also think that print is not, quote unquote, dead. I think that people are getting, or most likely some of them are receiving less mail. So this is a good opportunity to then maybe create a mailer and send out some mailers to either, quote unquote, to thank your donors, and then also to invite your donors to events. So for my upcoming gala, we're working on a print material to invite our attendees to join us online. But again, it's another way to engage people that are not comfortable even now going online. We might have some older donors that are very comfortable with just attending and giving their money, sending a check, and we don't want to forget those. Those are very important, instrumental people in our organization that we don't want to neglect. Organizing your database, I guess, is one of the biggest things, is making sure that your demographics. So that's kind of the going forward, even though we say virtual, we need to remember there's some people that are not used to that. And how do we keep on engaging with them, even though they might not be wanting to join us virtually? I haven't done this yet, but I have been attending a ton of these kind of events. These are panelist events, and I go to a lot of these. And I found one thing I want to leave you guys with, an idea, and I think I'm going to try it, is really cool, is again, asking our families and friends to create their own little parties. So even for our virtual gala, I was thinking about setting up a host your own gala party. So then they would, we could send them a little prize box to, or a dinner for the whole party, and to encourage them to, have a small, intimate gathering of family members, or, a safe gathering to, and then on top of that, they can watch it all together on TV or on their computer. So, kind of doing those workarounds, I think, is one of those ways, because grandma and grandpa or something like that might not go on the website, but if they're sitting with their grandkids or something, that might be okay. Again, safely. If grandma and grandpa hasn't seen them all summer, we don't want them to come over now, of course. But that's kind of where I was going with that.
Oh, those are great thoughts. Thank you. Wendy.
When something comes along that completely alters any business, I think sometimes your weaknesses kind of, float to the top, and the things that you always wanted to get to do and maybe didn't have an opportunity to do, kind of stare you in the face. So as mentioned before, being event-driven department, all our events tend to monopolize our day-to-day activities. So we now had the opportunity to look at things a different way, try new things. So we pushed out our Loyalty Circle, which is a monthly giving program. And that has brought in guaranteed monthly income. That's something we've always kind of wanted to do, weren't sure how to do. How do you engage people that way? But I think under the guise of COVID and the urgency that we now had in our agency, people were more responsive to that notion. We always make it available when people donate online. You have a choice of whether you make it one time or monthly, but we had never really pushed it out there before. So that worked out really well for us. So that was kind of a new strategy for us as well. And it's still growing. And the other thing is, donor outreach became more important than ever. And that is really my goal for 2021. A large amount of our donors are businesses. They're used to engaging with us around our events. And I think getting to our individual donors will be very important going forward. Also during this time, it gives us an opportunity, gave me an opportunity to really look at like Jamae mentioned, you really have time to look at your database. That is something that sometimes just escapes us because, we're constantly adding, and depending on what type of, database you're using, can really impact how everything is run. So, I always felt like we could use a little bit more in that department. So started looking at new ways to mine our database, to find out who our donors are, and to going forward, hopefully find a new way of handling our database. So all of those were kind of, some of the things that I'm going to add into this year's strategy, and also just looking at those different revenue streams and where everything's coming from, whether, grants also, just more of that type of, it gave me an opportunity to be a little bit more analytical of what we were doing instead of kind of just going from event to event in that kind of crisis mode in between. So I think that would be my best answer for going forward.
Great. Victoria, what about you?
Sure. So, I think you have to really learn to adjust quickly as well, because not every event is going to work in the same way. So, some events will be good to be peer-to-peer. Some events will be good for a campaign. Some are good for virtually. And kind of like Jamae was saying, is that also in your donor base, you have people that, if you have older donors, like a lot of our board members, they might not necessarily be, oh, let me go join this paint night, or let me go online for the Zoom call or whatever, so we also utilize mailers as well. So not only did we do like online platform, peer-to-peer fundraising, we did the mailers, we did, we had our virtual gala, and like Wendy was saying, a lot of our stuff was pre-recorded. So we had, some, well-known bands that recorded stuff for us. Howie Mandel was our host, and he was live, but we had a lot of like parents and families. So some stuff was pre-recorded, but that night you were able to give on the phone, you were able to give through our website, you were able to give. So we gave people different options so that even if our older donors weren't going to be on the Zoom, they knew, here's the phone number that I can call and give my donation, or I have my mailer, let me mail the check back. So I think that's something that is good to strategize, is different ways of accepting donations, but also different ways of utilizing your donor base as well. We also celebrated our 150th anniversary this year. So St. Mary's has been around for quite some time, and that was a huge thing for us. And obviously it was a huge bummer to not be able to really experience that in person and to bring our community members to our hospital. But we, shifted it to more of a peer-to-peer fundraiser. So not only can new donors, appreciate it, but donors who have been with us for a long time and community members who have all these experiences, people were sharing their photos, and, they were fundraising on their own. So it's just, I think strategies moving forward is you have to really look at the kinds of donors you have and figure out the best way to reach them, and, just utilize different tools in that way. And that's the best advice that I can give based on, what we did.
That's great. Now everybody had really great points that they touched on there. And I think one of them, I know it's something at Queens Botanical we, contemplated too, is, this virtual world means technology and utilization of technology. And, many of our organizations have sometimes an older donor base, and, that's a consideration. And it's something at the beginning we weren't even thinking of until we started planning that virtual gala, and then sort of realized, hey, wait a second, how are we going to help these people, especially if they want to be part of something? It was really something that none of us would have ever thought of before, because it was just always easy to connect with, our donor bases, whether it was through the mail or however it was, it always worked. So I totally get it. I'm going to move to a different question. In planning, especially these virtual events, and maybe it's more focused on galas for sure, but, everybody had to find technology and a platform to use And I would love to hear you guys share, and I'm sure the audience would like to hear too, about if you guys could talk about the platforms that you did use and if you would recommend them to others. So Victoria, I'm going to go right back to you.
Sure. So we use Convio and Team Razor for like our peer-to-peer campaigns and online campaigns. It also depends on what system you're working with. So there are obviously, we have some struggles with the system that we utilize, but that's really what we use. And also we use Instagram and Facebook a lot as well, because now that Facebook, you can register as a nonprofit. And if people do fundraisers for, you have to go through the application process. It doesn't take too long, but I would definitely recommend doing that. Because if you fundraise for yourself, or if other people fundraise for you, or they could do birthday fundraisers, the money will be sent to you directly from Facebook. So I think, we also use Zoom, Facebook Live, things like that. So those are the platforms. We didn't really try too many new ones. We kind of use the ones that we already use and try to use them in different ways. But that's what we utilized.
Great. I guess you were fortunate that you're already utilizing some of those platforms before, and it probably made for a little bit of an easier transition. Jermaine.
Well, we actually were experimenting with different platforms because we were looking for like an all-in-one kind of capacity where you can not only show your event, but you can run your event, but you can also receive donations at the same time. So I found the Give Butter is a great site. It helps. I'm going to share you really quick. It helped by showing not only like your video, or if you want to do a live presentation, you could do it within this kind of area, and then you can have your donate button that's very clearly labeled, and then people can comment along the side, even show cute photos of your child along the side. And it's a cool way to also reach out to new donors, and it's very user friendly. And I think that was the key thing for us, is finding something that was a little bit more user friendly, because the initial program that we were using for many years is not as user friendly. We're all used to pressing a button and it just kind of makes it look pretty and all that. So we use this, and I do like their site. I think that they do a great job. And but for our gala, I've been looking even more into something, an all-in-one package, because in our gala we want to do a live auction, we want to do a presentation, and we also want to have like a live ask, right? So I'm looking for a site that would kind of encompass all that. I did find a site, I don't know if I'm going to use it yet, but it does have all the things that I like in it. It's called Qtego, Qtego. And it really does seem to have all of it in one, capacity wise, where it will, if you have an auction item that's live right there, it will blink if you're using a mobile device or on your computer, and it will bring it up for people to see. There is cost associated to that one. That's the biggest thing. And when you're trying to limit your costs, you have to think about kind of your budget in terms of platforms. Give Butter, though, on the positive note, it does have a zero platform fee, which is pretty amazing. You can push the fees over to, they ask for like a tip from your donors, which donors don't have to give, but more likely than not they do. But at the end of the day, you can pay for Give Butter, which would remove the tip. So that's another option. But people, I think, are getting used to that whole like service fee or additional fee for online giving, and they're kind of not thinking anything of it. And then if you have like a major donor or something like that, you really don't want them to go through a website. You could just have them go call you directly, and they don't have those additional fees. So those are one of those benefits. So I definitely recommend that. And if you do wind up going to Give Butter, use my name, so we get some extra $100 and you get $100. It's a win-win.
That's awesome. Great, thank you. Wendy.
All right. So we've been using Mobile Cause for the past 3 years as our main platform for online fundraising, because we find that it has most of what we're looking for. I think everyone will agree, finding a platform that has everything is almost impossible. But it has event pages, ticketing, it does our peer-to-peer fundraising, it has great back-end reporting, and it also can accommodate live auctions. They've been doing a lot of upgrades to it over the years. It's really was created as a text to pledge platform, as hence the name Mobile Cause. So coming from a different, functionality on all these sites are so different, but coming from a CrowdRise or GoFundMe or a more peer-to-peer driven, online experience to more of a mobile experience was a shift for us. But they also have come a long way in developing their platform so that it is more web friendly and you can actually have your events, house everything in one place. They have the Facebook Live and the other capability to bring your event live to a live platform as well. So we've been pretty happy with it. But again, I don't know that there's anything out there that just gives you everything. But it also is not inexpensive. But for us, it's worth it since a lot of our fundraising is done online because we do so many peer-to-peer types of initiatives. So it works for us. Virtually, we use Zoom, Facebook Live. We did our gala on YouTube. We also tried another live event for our company staff party. Well, our agency had a online virtual holiday party. So I said, well, let's try something different. We tried it. It crashed when everyone tried to get into their room. So we're thankful that Zoom was there for a backup and we were able to improvise and it really saved us. So I'm sticking with Zoom. We have an event coming up, which is our Evening of Fine Food event, which was the last event we did last year. This is a heavy networking event, 500 people. So I as much as I said, it's great to pre-record everything, this is the type of event where I want people to see each other, be together, and kind of get the feeling that they had at our last event. So I'm willing to push the envelope a little bit and go out on a limb for this one and create an online experience that's interactive, where people can meet, greet, see each other, and feel like they're almost there. And we'll do that with different types of content and entertainment. And we're also doing home delivery for food. So people, because it's a food tasting, we usually have 50 vendors. So people will still be able to get a taste of our Evening of Fine Food vendors and order boxes of different cuisines. So we're very excited about that. And but for that, we'll probably stick to Zoom and utilize all of the tools that they make available to us to do that. And I think that's, we've tried lots of different things, but these are the things that are working for us right now.
Great. Yeah, that's awesome. In the being respectful of time, it's awesome that we have actually a lot of questions that have been typed in the Q&A box. So I'm going to try to take some of the common themes, and maybe we could try to get through some of these with the time that we have left. So one of the common themes was about, did you execute these events on your own, or did you hire an outside company to help do it? So please, whoever wants, Wendy, go ahead.
I'll hop in. So for our gala, we hired a production company who could handle the production and the broadcast of the live event. And we also have a consultant we work with, who I mentioned earlier, Alex, who is our videographer and does a lot of our video content and social media. So he produced our content, and then we used Henry from Deadline to do our live broadcast from our adult center. And that to me was crucial because we had to bring our honoree in. We had all of her guests on a Zoom room all together. But for the program, of course, we didn't want to broadcast the whole Zoom room. So we needed somebody who had something that's known as vMix, which can take, input other screens and other participants into one screen. So that worked out really well for us. And I highly recommend that when you're doing live, especially.
Great. Jimmy or Victoria, did you guys want to add anything to that?
Yeah, that's the same thing we did. We hired a production company, especially since we did pre-recorded things and live things. So we had a production company helping us with our virtual gala, but all the other, smaller events or, hybrid in the beginning, that was all our team.
Right. Great. So another question that came in was really around, what helped bring in your participants to the virtual events. So someone asked if we were, relying just on your own database of contacts, or did you find that social media and any other networking type of platforms brought in virtual participants as well? So, Jemay, do you want to, or maybe Victoria, you were nodding your head.
Yeah,
Yeah, again.
Well, for us, we basically had a lot of our families and friends participate in most of our items. But again, like Victoria had mentioned prior, we utilized their networks to really extend past. I think that kind of helped. Like we even did our Giving Tuesday campaign on Facebook, which we're also linked on Facebook and Instagram as well, which took us a lot longer than it sounds like it took you to be verified. But we're 100% verified on there now for donors. But they created their own campaigns and then got donors to donate to them. And I think that was really, again, to try to expand our database. And then, it's basically about utilizing a peer-to-peer effort. I think because, cold calling never really pans out. So you need to have at least a warm touch. And that's how you get those warm touches, by really utilizing the people that are so dedicated to your organization in the first place.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Great. I don't know, Victoria, if you wanted to add anything to that or not, it's fine if you didn't want to.
Yeah, I mean, emailing campaigns and social media campaigns is really just what helped us, and asking people to share. That was just one of the biggest tools that we use for that database.
Right.
Yeah. I also, I agree with what everyone's saying. You just have to reach out and enlist other people to help you. It's like, I don't know, I'm dating myself now, but there used to be a commercial on TV for shampoo, and the woman recommends the shampoo to her friend, who recommends it to her friend. And before you know it, you have a whole Zoom screen full of like people who like are using your product.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what it's like. It's getting that message out. I haven't mentioned this, but one of the initiatives we also did in terms of reaching out to new audience was we were just in the process of starting a business networking group when the pandemic hit, and we had one in-person event and we were ready to start our second. And instead what we did is we immediately said, well, we can't meet in person. We didn't want to lose momentum. So we decided we would just hold it online. So on March 25th, we launched our first weekly business networking online mixer. And what that, having a relationship, and this comes back to the chamber, of course, we are vital to the community, our nonprofits, as Tom had mentioned in the beginning. We are consumers. We are out there, spending money, shopping, doing all these things and supporting our local businesses. And for us at QCP, developing relationships with those businesses in our community was really important to us. So we started our business networking group. We have between 20 and 25 people who come in every week, and over 125 businesses that we've connected with through this initiative. So I highly recommend it. And of course, everyone is welcome. Reach out to me. I put my information. You are welcome to join us on Wednesdays as well. But that's just another part of the community that we need to reach out to and work with.
And I'll just speak to it. I've actually attended a bunch of these mixers that Wendy's referring to. She was nice enough to invite me. And I got to say, they do a great job. And I highly encourage people to attend. It's a really good use of your time. Another common theme in some of the questions I'm seeing revolves around timelines. And what, obviously we were all used to in-person events and we knew how to plan for them. And now we're all doing these virtual events, and obviously those timelines have changed. So maybe if each of the three of you could share your thoughts on that topic.
Well, I'm in the midst of it right now and literally staring at my timeline right this second. So this is kind of what it looks like on my world, but it's not necessarily what everybody's looks like. We typically was going to hold our event in November, but that was going to be then pushed back. Now we have our date is March 25th, and we kind of, have a task list, which is massive of all the things that you have to do, because even though it's virtual, it does not mean that it's easier. You still need to kind of go through all your steps and make sure you have your theme down, you have your, what you want to send out down, what you sponsors, packages, all the other things. So, and the other thing that I want to mention is that every panelist on here is has a different team, right? So I'm a team of one with thank goodness, a consultant. And I know Wendy and Victoria also have different things as well. So utilizing my volunteers is a huge thing that we're doing as well. And we have committees that we work with. So my committees are helping us to organize things and to really help to get the word out, I think is also key for us as well. So timeline, and also regular meetings that we have planned. So that's kind of what we're doing for our big event, for our virtual gala. For smaller events, I think, we all could speak to kind of throw together sometimes. But I'll let the other ladies speak as well.
That's like super impressive what you just saw, and I want you to send that to me right away. I started giggling when you started asking the question, because if I could ever nail a timeline for an event, I'd be really happy. Because it just seems like no matter how hard, getting people, even like our event, this fine food event, imagine like you're trying to recruit 50 restaurants to all agree to participate and to get back to you. And like, it's just endless phone calls and, moving that timeline. But yeah, it's, now I'm on the 60-day, it's like 30-day ramp up, 30 days to sell tickets. And like, that's how we're going to look at it, and just get the information out. And I am grateful that I have a team to work with, but, it is more work. It's harder. It's, it's tiring. It's a hustle. My girlfriend, one day I called up a girlfriend, I said, this is really exhausting, I know we're all burning out because we're working more than ever from home or wherever we are. It's harder, and every day is a hustle. Getting a hold of people is a hustle. So you just have to like stick to it and stay with it. And, and somehow, as we all know, in the event business, it magically comes off and it's always, flawless. We're, everyone, the audience, not just us here, we're all professionals. We all know how to do this. So we got it, right?
And I have had timelines like this, but I have to give credit to Naft Productions. She's the company I'm using, and she's wonderful. And she's the one that helped set up this wonderful virtual timeline for us. And, again, sometimes reaching out for help is the best timeline you could ever come up with, because, sometimes you just can't do it all yourself. And I think that's one of those key things, that if you're a small budget or you're a big budget or you're one person or, a multi-office, come up with what works for you. And I think that's the message at the end of the day on that.
True.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I'll try to squeeze in another question here, because it was a really interesting one. Someone asked that, did you notice that obviously we're in a pandemic, and that sometimes during a crisis, your funding tends to go up a little more. People want to try to help. So moving forward, do you, what do you think you'll need to do to, to keep that level of engagement with your donor base, or do you need to do anything to do that?
I'd like to speak a little bit to that. I think that, depending on your mission and what your cause is, there are some causes that inherently draw donors because people connect with them. And for instance, I'll just cite somebody who works for an organization that, works with a cure for diseases, not anything specific, but in cases like that, there's always a need, there's always research. But I think in what we do, especially working with a population where there's no cure, this is a lifelong type of situation that our individuals live with, there's never you don't feel that urgency often. So really, when this pandemic hit, all of a sudden we had that urgency, and keeping people connected to the importance of the support post crisis is important. That was a great question. And going forward, we may not have the urgency, but people are more aware of the needs, and that's a real benefit.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better.
There you go. I'll squeeze in one last one. Hold on a second. And it was really about, have you noticed, and I know this could be different for the type of event that we've all been putting on, but have you found there's a best time of day where you're getting the most participants for something that you're doing? I mean, obviously galas are going to be at night, but it's a good question because, I'm involved in a lot of different kind of events, and we always wrestle with, is first thing in the morning better? Is the evening better? So anybody have any quick thoughts they'd like to share on that?
I mean, I think especially with virtual, I think that's always a struggle because if you do it earlier, some people are still working from home, or some people are in the office, so they might be commuting home. Some people have kids, so they can't do it until after the school. So I think it depends on the event that you're having. And I also think Instagram story also has helped us with asking questions to people. So like, if we were to do a paint night, what day is best for you? So like, is it a weekday or a weekend? So I also think asking people or surveys or things like that can also really help, especially if you are really unsure of what to do. But I always ask my committees and, sometimes our donors of what they prefer, and that's really helped us.
Great.
That's a great idea. I think that's also changed in the course of the pandemic, where early on people were home and really, really stuck at home. So you
Yep.
had more of an opportunity to play with that. But I
Mhm.
find that a lot of people are back in their offices, back working, homeschooling.
Yep.
So it just depends.
On the season too, as well. Like, in the winter, people might be home more, but in the summer, it was really difficult because if you don't hit them at the right time, they're either going to be outside walking the dog in the pool, even though they couldn't go out, they're going to try to be outside their house as much as possible. So I also think taking that into account as well was really important for us.
Definitely.
Great. A couple of people had asked in the Q&A about, if they could be sent a list of maybe some of the video production companies people have used or some of the other vendors and platforms. Maybe we'll talk with the folks at the chamber and see if we could push that out after. But I want to be respectful of everybody's time because we're already at 12 o'clock. I apologize if we didn't answer every question. I appreciate that there were so many questions put in the Q&A box. And I apologize that we didn't get a chance to get to every one of them. So I just want to give a big shout out to our panelists. You guys were awesome. And of course, thank everybody else, all our nonprofits for attending. I think a lot of great information was shared today, and I hope this helps you chart your organization's fundraising strategies moving forward. So before you leave, just please stay tuned for more announcements from the Chamber for our next event, which will be coming up. And thank you for your continued support of the Chamber. We really appreciate it. Stay safe, everyone. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.